Production.
We are recording.
We're live. Good.
Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Water and Power Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Assistant General Counsel Richard Tom.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. As permitted under Governor Newsom's emergency order of March 17, 2020, all of the board are teleconferencing from remote locations. Also, consistent with the governor's order, all public comment will be taken telephonically. We may announce a recess if we have difficulties or lose a quorum due to technical difficulties. Members of the public wanting to offer public comment should call 213-306-3065 and use meeting code 187-283-4769# and follow the cues. Again, the number is 213-306-3065 and the meeting code is 187-283-4769#. There is a call moderator, and when it is your turn to speak, please state whether you are speaking on specific agenda items or in general public comment. You will have 2 minutes for your comments. It is important when you are going to speak to please turn down the volume of the devices you are listening on so we do not get audio feedback. The board secretary will now call the roll.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Vice President Reyes. Vice President Reyes. Can you unmute, please?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner BARAD.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY.
Present.
5 members present and a quorum. Opening of the board meeting by President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you, Yvette. This morning, I actually do have some prepared comments and will be sharing this particular section of the agenda with our Vice President. According to Stop AAPI Hate, between March 2020 and February 2021, there were 3,795 documented racially motivated attacks against members of the AAPI community. 3,795. That doesn't account for the thousands of unreported incidents or the ones that are just not characterized as hate crimes. And it doesn't include the tragic events of last week. I simply have no words profound enough to express the horror and despair associated with the slaughter of 8 people, including 6 women of Asian descent in Atlanta 1 week ago today. Mothers, daughters, grandmothers, each one with her own story, lives centered in aspiration and love, fueled by courage, and working to make manifest the American dream for themselves and their families. Their individual stories, even as they are now part of the painful American through line of racism and xenophobia, will live on in the memories of their loved ones and the promise of the children that have been left behind. I know that this is a meeting of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power Commission, and that the kind of racism, hate, violence, and misogyny we saw in Atlanta is beyond our jurisdiction. That said, time and time again, members of this department refer to themselves as a family, and I am now privileged to be part of that family. There are 1,316 AAPI members of this family in a city that is 11.8% Asian. Families see each other, reach out to each other in times of distress, stand up for each other, and when necessary, defend each other. If the stress of this past year, a pandemic, unimaginable death, and the unrelenting scapegoating of people of Asian descent has revealed nothing else, it shows us how important it is that we, those of us who seek to be allies to the AAPI community, make room for the unique stories and experiences of our colleagues, our friends, the AAPI members of our DWP family. Especially now, it's incumbent upon us to reach out, to check in, and to listen. Before taking my own advice, I want to close with this. If you hear some seemingly small insult or racial or ethnic joke, or encounter any form of bigotry directed at a member of this department or anyone in any part of your life, as a person of color, I urge you to consider the insight captured by Martin Luther King Jr. in 1965 at the height of what we commonly refer to as the Civil Rights Movement. He said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." This is no time for silence. With that, I want to yield the floor to my friend, colleague, and our board vice president, SUSANA REYES.
Thank you, President McCLAIN-HILL, for your words of wisdom, comfort, and solidarity. I also want to thank Mayor Garcetti and our city leaders for their consistent leadership on this issue and for their persistence in standing strongly against anti-Asian xenophobia and hate. I speak before you today as your Commissioner of Asian Descent, whose lived experiences mirror the challenges and barriers faced by Asian families, co-workers, employees, and friends. As a parent of 4 daughters who are part Chinese and part Filipino, I'm grief-stricken, disgusted, frustrated, and angry about the rising hate incidents and crimes, and frankly, my fears and anxieties are on the rise. As a trusted public institution, I believe the public and our employees should know how LADWP feels, where we stand, and what we are doing about it. The fatal shootings of 8 people in Atlanta, including 6 Asian women, put into sharp focus the calls to end anti-Asian racism. But this is just the latest of a devastating string of incidents that have gotten more attention since the beginning of the pandemic. As we mourn for the victims, we must resist reducing them to statistics of anti-Asian violence. Say their names, humanize them, render them visible, and recognize that the present moment of anti-Asian violence is a reflection of our brutal and violent history. We must begin talking about this violence in a way that centers our most marginalized and at-risk groups. Unfortunately, it is easier to scapegoat and direct anger and rage against COVID-19 rather than to really understand the problem in full complexity. Hate crimes are motivated by prejudice and bias against the victim's actual or perceived race, religion, sexual orientation, or national origins. The pandemic, as you know, has also laid bare the deep economic and racial disparities that have shaped and continue to shape the lives of different racial communities that LADWP serves. We need to reckon with both the history and the ongoing impact that racism, hate, and violence are having on our community, especially on women, youth, and seniors who are particularly vulnerable. We need to reckon also with our invisibility, because Asian Americans are lumped together as a monolith that does not distinguish the uniqueness of each race, and it does injustice to groups disproportionately impacted. They should be more heard and seen. A good place to begin is for all of us to acknowledge that Asian American hate and racism exists in the first place. Dismantling that model minority myth, that stereotype, is key, because it is in that stereotype through which the successes of a few Asians obscure the stark inequities of other groups. This stereotype essentially absolved white systems from taking real accountability. I really have to mention that just for a fact. There are wide differences between different Asian American groups. Many are struggling economically. We have Asian Americans who work as healthcare workers, nurses, restaurant workers, grocery workers, and others who have been victims of hate, and they have suffered disproportionately from the pandemic. Understanding Asian American culture is paramount. It is a culture where there is sometimes a reluctance to contact law enforcement for a variety of reasons that can include language barriers. It is also a culture of keeping heads down when it comes to conflict and things that humiliate them, that they don't want to talk about it. But this is not the time to be passive, because any act of hate against any one of us is an act of hate against all of us. I'm heartened by all the work our city is doing to address the surge in Asian hate crimes. There are more than 40 appointed commissioners who are of AAPI descent in our boards and commissions throughout the city. We met with Mayor Garcetti, recognizing the need for action even before the Atlanta shooting. The formation of a city task force on AAPI hate incident and crimes is in the works. Our city council is working on legislation to improve city response and reporting. The new Civil, Human Rights, and Equity Department established by Mayor Garcetti is tasked to monitor and address claims against racism. And many of those are civil rights violations, from verbal attacks to racial slurs to discrimination in the workplace. Our city's Hate Has No Place in LA program literally means that. There is no part in LA that we will accept hate, and there will be repercussions for violators. Reporting all incidents of hate crime should not be feared or shamed. And to all our Asian American employees, we see you, we hear you. And as President McClain said, we are one big family. At times like this, the reasonable thing managers can do for our Asian American employees is to use their privilege to acknowledge the recent news of anti-Asian violence and give space for impacted individuals to process, discuss, grieve, and heal. And anything concerning marginalization has a place to be discussed in the workplace, because the workplace repeats all the same patterns we see in society at large. The department's racial equity plan is needed more than ever to provide a multi-dimensional solution that will transform LADWP using that diversity and equity lens to address disparities. That plan should be a living document. It should guide the way we operate and the way we serve. The department's equal employment opportunity policy and program sets the tone and baseline for how employees should treat each other at work and for the department to sustain a culture that has zero tolerance for hate, harassment, and discrimination. And as for department executives and decision makers, becoming more of an ally in racial equity is the most impactful action you can take. How are you being anti-racist and supporting our employees with education and resources? How are you transforming policies and practices to level the playing field, be more transparent and inclusive, and provide access to resources and create opportunities for our employees to thrive? When you use aspects of your identities and you hold power and you use your advantaged position to advocate for people in less advantaged positions, you are an ally. Thank you. I urge all of us to stand together against hate. Diversity is our strength, but it is also fragile. It must be protected, appreciated, and sustained. I encourage all DWP employees to get engaged for the long haul, not just in this moment. The only way we'll see things shift and change is when all of us are in the struggle for racial justice and equity together. Thank you for this time and for this opportunity.
Thank you, Susanna. Appreciate those comments. If we could now move to general public comment. Let me just first, I think I can see everyone. Are there any remarks from other commissioners, or are we ready to move? We'll let Susanna have the last word and move to general public comment. Board Secretary?
Yes, general public comment. Caller with the area code 310819, please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Callers with the area code 310 prefix 819, will you please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on? Okay, we will move to the next caller. Caller with the area code 213926. Please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Okay, I'm gonna, one more time for caller with the area code 213 prefix 926. Are you there? Okay, moving on to the next caller with the area code 310 prefix 819. Please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Okay, caller with area code 310 prefix 927. Are you there? It looks like we may be having technical difficulties. Give us a moment, please. would we like to move to the next item and return to general public comment? President McCLAIN-HILL.
We can certainly do that while you guys work through that. Thank you. Marty, the general manager's reports.
Thank you, Madam President. So first of all, I would like to thank you and acknowledge you for your comments, and certainly for the comments of Commissioner Reyes. It is certainly a very pressing issue with what we're seeing going on in society today. And I wanted to let you know, and to let our employees know, that as a management team, we also, share the concern with what we see going on around us in regards to acts of violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Both the communities that we serve, in particular, are many employees of Asian heritage. As we have seen in our presentations on racial equity, and Commissioner Reyes pointed this out, we have a very rich diversity in our workforce, and something to be celebrated and to be built upon. And we are very similar to the communities that we serve. And to me, it's very important to remind all of our employees that racism, bias, and hatred towards any group has no place here, both in how we treat each other and certainly in how we treat and serve our customers. And while we're certainly not perfect, I'm very proud of the concern and support that we are accustomed to show for each other here. And I encourage all of our employees to be sensitive and aware of the issues facing members of the Asian American Pacific Islander community right now, and to truly stand together and look out for each other's safety and welfare. I'll be putting out a bulletin today as a reminder to all of our employees that our workplace should be a safe environment for everyone. And if anyone experiences or witnesses anything that resembles racial hatred in any way, to report it immediately so that we can deal with it and address it and put it to an end. But this is a very important issue and something that we are very sensitive about. And we continue to see, turmoil in the world around us. We need to make sure that that turmoil is not present here in the department, and that we act as a settling force, and certainly both how we treat each other and all the communities that we serve throughout the city. Next, I'd like to talk about an event we had last week. It was in regards to Women's History Month. Last Wednesday, in celebration of Women's History Month, we partnered with Local 18 to host a virtual women's empowerment panel discussion, featuring a number of our inspiring female colleagues who shared their career success stories and talked about the challenges that they've had to overcome in their professional and personal lives. We had nearly 300 participants listen into the event, and of course, Commission President McCLAIN-HILL spoke, as well as myself and IBW Business Manager Brian D'Arcy, who was a co-sponsor, and our own Wendy Yancey, moderator for the event, did a fantastic job. Just to highlight the folks we had on that we heard from LaTanya Bogan, who's Utility Executive Secretary in Public Affairs and also happens to be the president of our Water and Power Retirement Board. We heard from Connie de Guzman, who's a principal clerk utility, Alicia Dickerson, who's a maintenance and construction helper and who came through the utility pre-craft trainee ranks through that program. Flor Delisa Gonzalez is a supervising water service representative. Erica Jaramillo, can't speak this morning, I apologize, is commercial service supervisor. And Diane Rojo is a senior gardener, also came through the UPCT program. We did get some great input. It was really interesting to hear the presentations of these remarkable women and what they've done in their career and how they've made their own pathway here at Water and Power. And did get some great input from them, and also people who commented and called and asked questions for things that we can really do to help improve and support the women in our workforce here at Water and Power. Speaking of one of the women in our workforce who is has a very prominent role, our own Dr. Leslie Israel, she's our chief physician, and she's been playing an increasingly important role during our dealing with the COVID pandemic. And in response to a number of questions and concerns that we have regarding vaccines and the same kind of things that are going on in society at large, where people are questioning the safety or whether they should get a vaccine or if they have other concerns, Dr. Israel hosted a brown bag lunch last week and had about 250 employees who tuned into this to really get to the topics of, why should I get vaccinated? Is it safe to get vaccinated? Try to answer the questions that people had. And that video will be posted online so that all of our employees can see. But she's done a great service to help really educate our workforce about COVID issues and particularly about vaccine and vaccine safety. Public Affairs has had some great success. The first edition of our LADWP CYNTHIA quarterly newsletter was sent to 284 subscribers on March 9th. We had an open rate of just under 50%, which is about 2.5 times higher than the industry average. And so we got great viewership. And the first edition covered issues such as environmental stewardship and safe recreation initiatives in the Owens Valley and Mono Basin, as well as some of our restoration efforts, and talked about the Owens Valley electric customer information, other upcoming events, a recruitment link, and safety messages that we have for the public. And it's open for anyone to subscribe to that newsletter. Speaking of Eastern Sierra, we did have our latest snow report this morning. We are, with the little bit of precipitation we had last week, we're sitting just a hair above 50% of normal. As Rich has pointed out, we're not expecting to be in drought conditions because of good planning, management of our water demands, and having adequate storage. But it is going to be a dry year. We're expecting about a 50% of normal for our April 1st snow survey. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy Sutley. Nancy's going to talk about, and issue an award with the Electric Power Research Institute that we recently received. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you, Marty. Good morning. We are receiving a 2020 Technology Transfer Award from the Electric Power Research Institute. We work closely with the EPRI staff to identify, to participate in a strategic landholding analysis. So we are a large landowner here in the basin and other parts of California, and we wanted to better understand some of the ecosystem and biodiversity value of that land, and whether we could use any of those properties to enhance ecosystem or biodiversity value. So we work closely with EPRI staff. They analyzed over 6,000 acres of our land holdings and almost 1,000 parcels. And so now we have access to GIS maps, which look at the biodiversity value and the ecosystem value of a number of our land holdings, and some better idea of how we can use those to enhance those values here, primarily in the basin. So a number of folks around the department, from water, power, real estate, sustainability, worked with the EPRI staff on this, and we were very excited to be a part of it and glad to be recognized by EPRI for our efforts. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you for taking the lead on that. Lastly, I wanted to announce a very important and significant event tomorrow. As the board recalls, we've briefed you on the LA 100 renewable energy study, looking at how we can get to 100% renewable energy in the future. Tomorrow, the mayor's office, along with the U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab, called NREL, as you'll recall, and Water Power will officially release the LA 100 study at a press conference, a virtual press conference at 9 a.m. The LA 100 stemmed from a motion that was approved by the city council and mayor to really determine the technical feasibility and the investment pathways to get to the 100% renewable energy portfolio that we're looking for the city's future. We partnered with NREL to conduct the most comprehensive, first of its kind study really ever done in the country that looked at all of our power demands in the future, really analyzed our system beyond to a tremendously fine-tuned degree, and really beyond what anyone has ever tried to undertake in the past, and helped us to evaluate what the pathways to the future look like. The process considered valuable input from the community, customers, businesses, government agencies, university researchers, and other stakeholders, many of whom you've heard from at board meetings over the course of this time. And they're all part of an LA-based advisory group that kicked off in June of 2017. And just last Friday, they had their 15th meeting, 15th quarterly meeting. So they're a very dedicated group to the success of this venture. So the press event will feature Mayor Eric Garcetti, who has been a great champion of this effort and is very excited about the results. The Honorable Jennifer Granholm, who's the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Energy, will be speaking. Several city council members, and Dr. Martin Keller, who's the Executive Director of NREL. And then, of course, Commission President McCLAIN-HILL and myself will say a few words as well. But this is a great event. This caps off a number of years of very diligent effort by our own staff and by the NREL staff, and certainly a lot of commitment by the advisory group, really helping us set the course and looking at what it takes to get to the future that we all hope and dream for. So, Reiko, do you want to say a few words about that before I wrap up here?
Just really quickly before that, anybody that is not speaking, please put your mic on mute. They're incredibly sensitive, and we pick up all kinds of background noise. So Marty's talked over it, but I don't want to put Reiko through that. So thanks.
Go ahead, Reiko.
For people who are speaking, like Reiko, you've got to take your mic off mute.
See there?
I think you got it, Reiko.
There you go.
Reiko. She's unmuted. She's muted. She's not muted. Reiko? Yeah, she's not muted.
Yeah, Reiko, I think somehow you're double muted. So we'll give you a sec to figure that out. Otherwise, actually, while you're figuring that out, Marty, I did want to compliment the work of our corporate safety folks with respect to the COVID response, along with Dr. Israel's work and also our public affairs team. It's really been stellar. I know we put a lot of energy and effort into to making it as robust as possible. So between the overall, the expansion of testing and the defensive response that we were in last year, moving to the distribution of vaccinations, the department has done a really seamless job collaborating with the fire department, other city agencies, but just kudos to the folks, our internal folks that are doing this work. I just wanted to give you that feedback. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the report, the general manager's report? Again, while Reiko is getting ready to come online.
I had a question for Nancy Sudley. Did she say ESRI participated in the ecosystem? Yes. ESRI.
EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute. So
okay. EPRI. Okay, EPRI. It's different than ESRI. Okay.
Yes, different than EPRI.
Very different. And then
learning more, we're happy to give you a little briefing if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, it would be very interesting. In terms of the LA 100, when is the event?
It's tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Okay.
I'll make sure you should have a calendar invite, but I'll make sure it gets sent again because I know everybody gets a lot of emails, so I'll make sure that you have that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I didn't know about the women's celebration last week, so I would have wanted to be there to celebrate the women, but
I apologize.
Anyway, no, that's no problem. I could have missed it too. Thank you.
I would like to point out, Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL noted about our COVID response. I'd be remiss to not recognize Nazir Fazli, who heads up corporate safety, who you've heard from before, and certainly Yolanda Mendo, who is heading up the team that's doing all the, they do a lot of tracing calling, but also handling all the vaccination calls, all the questions, routing answers to people, have done a remarkable job in really serving our workforce. So they are hats off to them and the teams that they're leading.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
So this is Reiko. So I'm not Andy Kendall. For some reason, I can't get off mute. So I just would like on this LA 100 study, since it's so groundbreaking and industry leading, to acknowledge and appreciate the hard work of so many staff members in coordinating the LA 100 study, the culmination of over 3 years of hard work, including 15 meetings that Marty talked about that had members representing communities, customers, labor, business, the Office of Public Accountability, environmental, and concerted effort by Power System Resource Planning, Clean Grid LA, Environmental Affairs, Finance, Public Affairs, FSO, and others that committed dozens of hours, including members of the mayor's staff, council district staff, board members. It truly was a historic effort over a long period of time, and this truly will shape the future of the city's power needs, and just cannot underscore the importance of this study. So just a huge thank you that we will never be able to repay the debt of gratitude that we owe for those folks that did participate and will continue to participate in the future and follow this effort.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Marty, are you complete with your reporting?
That's it for me, unless you have any other questions.
Okay. I don't see questions and no one's jumped in. So what about general public comment? Is there general public comment, and has that issue been remedied?
Yes, President McCLAIN-HILL, we have done a sound check, so we're going to try this again.
Okay.
Caller with the area code 213598, please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ariel. Please disregard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 310, prefix 819, please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. One more time, area code 310819. Okay, we will move on to caller with the area code 323, prefix 377. Please state your name and the item.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Brisa Sotelo Vargas, representing Valero Energy with a refinery in the Wilmington area. And I am here to speak on item number 13. First of all, I'd like to thank the LADWP staff for their tirelessly work and effort to help us on this item. I'm here representing both the refinery and Air Products, as this is an agreement that we would be able to interconnect our facilities, and it's an agreement that we've had in place. It's soon to expire, and what we were trying to do is just to renew. So this agreement would be for the next 5 years. Again, it's an existing agreement that we'd like to continue. While we've done minor modifications, I would say that we worked tirelessly with your staff, including the city attorney, to expedite this and work to make sure that we continue and are able to provide clean transportation fuels to the Southern California residents. I'd also like to make sure we focus that, Valero prides itself in focusing on safety, reliability, and operations excellence to deliver such products of our folks in the Southern California area. I also would add that we strive to reduce our emissions, increase efficiency, and invest in opportunities that improve both our environmental stewardship. With that, I'd ask that you support item number 13, and I'm happy to answer any questions further on down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. The next caller will be area code 310, prefix 819. Please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Okay, and then last caller would be area code 310 with prefix 927. Please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Area code 310 with the prefix 927. Okay, that will complete the public comment. All public comment is now closed. Thank you. Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL?
Yes, thank you. Sorry. We have nothing for item number 4. For item number 5, are there any comments at this time from the ratepayer advocate or Dr. Pickle, will you defer till such time as items are called?
I will defer to the time those items are called.
Okay, thank
Thank
you. Do we have any item filed from neighborhood councils?
Yes.
Yvette?
Yes. No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Okay, great. Then we will move to item number 7. And we have called special the following items. Item 17 is called for discussion. That leaves us with items 10 through 16 and items 18 and 19 for approval. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Terrific. We have a motion and a second for items 10 through 16 and items 18 and 19. Will you please take the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD,
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER,
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady,
Aye.
5 ayes.
Terrific. Motion passes. And we'll now move to management reports. The LA Cares Utility Grant Program, is that Ann or Sharon that will be presenting?
Good morning, Commissioners. It's actually going to be a tag team of myself, Sharon, and Joe Romallo.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
So this morning, we wanted to give you a brief summary of the CARES Utility Grant Program that we did back in November, December. Next slide. So as you remember, the department received $50 million to potentially grant 100,000 grants for customers who were impacted by the COVID pandemic. And what we did was we sent out that application online, and we had 81,907 applications received for the grant. Out of that 81,000, 37,706 were assistance program customers, so ones that were in the low income or the Lifeline program. And the remainder of them were self-certifying that they were low income or impacted by the grant. And of those, we had 5,421 duplicates. We had 9,171 applications that the person could not be approved, either based on lack of documentation showing that they had been impacted or some other instance. But we were able to give 67,315 grants for our customers. So that that went out in the middle of December. And so far we've seen, as of the 11th, we had 66,062 checks cashed. As of this morning, we saw 66,215. So we have 1,100 checks outstanding. We have reissued some where the customer said that they haven't received. We actually did receive some return checks. 241 were returned by mail. So we've been working with the customer. 217 of those have been remailed, or we've contacted the customer and set up a meeting place for them to pick it up. And then out of the 303 checks lost in the mail, we have worked with the customers. So 298 of those have been reissued, and we're connecting with the remaining customers. So we have seen the majority of them reach our customers. Next slide. And when we were doing the program, we were trying to get the money out quickly. So when we did send out the checks in mid-December, we did see 88% of the checks clear that same month. So when we did this program, we were tracking how quickly were customers receiving the money and cashing the checks. And we can see that the majority of the checks were cleared in December and January. And we're just working with the remaining customers to clear the rest of those checks. Next slide. Now, as part of this program, we did incur some banking fees, which included our postage, $66,829. Normally, our accounts payable unit, our disbursements unit, they issue maybe 200 checks a day. But with this volume of checks, we reached out to our commercial bank, Wells Fargo, and Office of Finance, and they have a payment manager program where we were able to do 18,000 checks a day. So that helped us get the money out quickly. So within these fees, the $23,000, it did include setting up for this new program so we could get the high volume of checks out. We did sign up for monthly reporting so we could look to see how many checks cleared, make sure that we had our fraud filters on to make sure that we didn't have fraud on the account. And we did incur $28,280 in postage, which we would have incurred even if we had mailed the checks out ourselves. So we are pretty close to having all the checks completed, and we're just working with the remaining customers to clear those remaining checks. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to give the high-level program overview.
Thank you, Ann. I'm going to talk about the high-level program overview. I'm going to talk about the process, and I'm going to talk about some of the results we got when we surveyed customers about their experience working with us in the CARES grant program. So the overview, I think Ann's gone through some of this. It was a $500 grant. We received 82,000 applications from customers. But I think what's really interesting here is we had to get up and running very quickly. So we had 6 weeks to develop this program. We were able to produce an online application, get all our processes in place, figure out how to communicate with customers so that we could launch on time to make sure these funds were going to be able to be used effectively for the City of Los Angeles. Next slide. We had a lot of activity going throughout this time period. And we continue to remind customers to cash their checks. It's, to make sure that we produce checks that have been lost. And as Ann said, we're going to continue to work on this probably through May of this year. We want to make sure that everybody that applied and got approved is able to get their cash. Next slide. We spent a lot of time talking to CBOs throughout this process. They were more than helpful. They participated in workshops. We had weekly touch base calls. We even had nightly office hour calls to make sure that we were supporting them in their outreach with customers. I think I've mentioned this in another board presentation, but we even had a CBO that conducted their own webinars with their constituents. So we had a lot of great participation by the community. Next slide, please. So the results, again, were great. We were able to disperse $34 million. We were able to understand a lot of process improvements because we know this is a journey that we might be able to utilize this process going forward with a lot of the new federal funding that's coming. So we were able to make it more efficient as we uploaded the files, processed applications, audited applications. As you might know, we not only audited the applications for approval once, but we did it twice. First my group and then Ann's group to ensure that these customers either were approved appropriately if they hadn't been approved, were they so we're very, very careful in dispersing these. The other really great thing that happened was we were able to get 43,000 new web users. We sent out 47,000 low-income applications, and our low-income discount customers increased by tens of thousands. So this is a great benefit to our customers overall and in a sustainable way. Next slide. We went out to our customers quite soon after this program to make sure that we got appropriate feedback. We collected surveys from customers between January 19th and February 11th, and they were all sorts of customers. We asked customers that did get approved, that didn't get approved, that were existing discount customers, or that were income qualified but not part of our discount program. And so you can see the results are very positive. They felt that the website was easy to understand, that the application steps were acceptable, they were satisfied with the process, and they would recommend it to others. So we got great feedback. The awareness is going to help us. The initial program awareness, most of the customers heard about it from us, some through word of mouth, some through our community-based organizations, and some couldn't remember how they found out. Next slide. We also studied when customers that could have gotten this grant but did not apply. We were very interested in this group of people because, as I said, we weren't able to give away all $50 million. So we did a deep dive for these customers that just did not apply. And so we found that some of the issues that they didn't apply were process related, such as didn't know how to apply, didn't have an online profile, application process was difficult, so they were process concerns. And then some were forgot the deadline, was interested but didn't need the money. Those things were sort of communications related. And this will help us going forward, as I said, when we are able to have an opportunity to give away more potentially federal funding. The other thing I wanted to mention before I pass this on to Joe is that we did see that the preponderance of the grants did go to our discount customers. Basically, 27% of all of our discount customers have arrears that are more than 61 days old, but 37% of all of our discount customers with arrears did receive the grant. So that was positive. We targeted the right audience. And we got a lot of information back. And the other very heartening news was we found that CARES funding has gone to customers who resided in zip codes with higher poverty rates. And so we did a heat map. So we were able to determine that, yes, our outreach and our efforts did address the communities that were most in need. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to talk about some of our communication efforts. Joe?
Thank you, Sharon.
Quickly, I'm sorry, but quickly, Sharon, a couple questions. You said that the majority, I think in a couple slides earlier, it looked like the majority of the funds went to folks who self-certified that they qualified, as opposed to people that are currently in our program. I may have missed that.
No, that was very quick eyes there. We actually had, it was about half and half. About 51% of the customers that got grants were already enrolled in a discount program, and 40% of them were not enrolled in a discount program. So it really was about half and half when we analyzed the results.
Okay. And then another question I had, because you're showing a lot of analytics here, but I do recall that at the time the program was being administered, that our call volume spiked really significantly, call wait times. Is that something that you looked at? I mean, you've made reference to potentially DWP being in a position to administer a program of this type in the future, depending, I guess, on what happens with some of the federal relief programs. That, from my perspective, was a significant issue relative to this particular effort, and so I'm curious about that.
Right. So the call wait time spiked not because we were fielding calls from these the CARES grant enrollees. What happened is because—
No, I understand it's because of the way you pull folks off, as I understand, one task to actually go through the vetting of these applications, et cetera, right?
Right.
Yeah, so
right.
so my issue, so were we to do this again, we certainly don't want to have that kind of an issue. So I was curious, I didn't see anything here looking at the actual impact of the administration of the program and lessons learned with respect to that.
Yeah, this was a result of having to really quickly ramp up in a program, and absolutely, when we have the ability to, as a matter of fact, right now we're already working through a process that we could utilize if we were to get more grant funding. And so with more lead time and more planning time, we're going to find alternatives to just pulling people off the telephone to administer a program.
Okay, well, we may not have more lead time, so I would imagine that you would have developed or you are looking for an alternative way of doing this if it were to come again at us quickly.
That's what we're working on right now.
All right, I'll be interested in that update. And then you indicated on another slide, if you'll go, it was the slide about how people found out about it. So where it says, back up one, where it says 56% LADWP and then 23% social media, the 56% or the LADWP awareness, what does that involve? Is that in Joe's presentation, or are you including, because I know a lot of our own outreach was via social media and other platforms, so what's included in the LADWP?
So when we surveyed customers to ask them about the program, their recall was that they heard it from LADWP. So this was a customer perception, and this would be in Joe's going to cover that, but Joe did many, many things even beyond social media, and he'll talk through it, such as postcards, flyers, that type of information.
Okay, and then go to your final slide. I did not know how to apply. I'm just, because I assume that that's a communications issue from your perspective as well. You indicated other things were communications based. Did you have any?
When we looked at these results, absolutely right. I did not know how to apply. Could be somebody didn't hear about it or they didn't understand the instructions. And so this is something that can be actually a process issue. We have to streamline, simplify the application process. We want to simplify the language going forward. We want to build more capacity to do technical support for our external partners. So we do think that that's something that we need to focus on in a couple different areas.
Or I assume it could also have just been a function of time, right?
Yes.
Is I did not know how to apply, I didn't know about it, or is it that I didn't understand how to actually execute an application? Because those are two different things.
I think they could be both things, because again, these are responses from customers, and you're absolutely right, they could be taken both ways.
Okay, because I think that you have to, as we are drawing conclusions about this particular effort, it's probably important to remember that it took place over the course of a few weeks. You know, even the potential of expending all of the money would have been significantly impacted had we gone another week. So I don't think that necessarily reflects a failure in communication as much as it reflects a real limitation on the amount of time that the department had to execute.
I agree.
So I would just keep that in mind as well. And then any feedback around the fact that it was online only. I know that we're seeing a lot of concern or challenges associated with the COVID vaccine registration being an online only process. And so I'm just curious as to whether or not you got feedback around that from either customers or from CBOs or anyone that you were dealing with.
Yeah, the difficult part was not necessarily the online application. It was that they had to upload documentation, and that's where things got more difficult. You see in these particular results, it showed customers might not have had an online profile. The application process was difficult. But the previous slide shows that the people that did end up applying thought the application process was relatively acceptable, and the sign-up process was pretty straightforward. And so we really want to focus on what was different about these customers that made it very hard for them to apply for this grant.
And what should we be doing if customers don't have an online profile that made it difficult for them to apply, and maybe they were qualified, right? So we missed that boat, so to speak. So what could we have done better? So we're talking about lessons learned and best practices here. What could we have, in hindsight, what could we have done better?
I mean, we did get 43,000 new web users through this process, which of course helps us facilitate communication with a lot of different customers. But we did look at customers, we have low-income customers and we have lifeline customers, and the lifeline customers can be, older customers that we have, and we saw that was a group that had more difficulty with that. And so this is something that we're going to focus on moving forward. And it's a little bit of it. We have to be careful because we don't want to impact a customer's private information, but we do want to facilitate them applying. We've been talking to the HSID organization for the city, and again, they've a lot of experience doing the rental relief, and so we're observing their process, which is also an online application. So I think it's very effective to do online applications, but I think we have to really widen our network of support to make sure that we get every customer that is eligible for a grant has the opportunity to apply for a grant.
I would suggest, frankly, that we also work closely with and engage CBOs and other groups for the myriad of customers for whom online really doesn't work. I mean, again, we've got both the example of what's occurred in the context of online learning and the impacts that the disproportionately bad outcomes and impacts associated with communities of color. And with respect to COVID, I mean, there's sites where people are literally signing folks up on the spot because the online process is so inaccessible to those folks. So notwithstanding perhaps your experience that online works, and the evidence being the people who applied, so who were able to access it online, I do think that there's a need to think about how we are dealing with challenged communities where broadband access and internet access and things of that nature, may not be as well deployed as you might imagine.
Excuse me, I will echo what you just said, and both of you just said. I find it hard to believe. I know of a lot of families whose children are having a really hard time because of the broadband, sort of weakness. And I would be curious if there's a safe way to have some kind of a roving or, service centers, temporary service centers with all the ways of protecting DWP staff in the same way that people can pay their bills, as I understand it, at the service centers, can't they? Isn't that what we were at some of this?
That is correct, Commissioner. We can do it by appointment. We are allowing customers to do that by appointment.
Okay, well, I just think that if we're doing where they can pay the bills, then this relief should happen in the same location by appointment. It just is. I think it's fabulous how far you've taken it, but everything I hear is that people are having a really hard time just working with the computers, and for vaccines and everything else. So this is no different.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sharon, one more question. Did were you able to survey the CBOs that we worked with on this CARES program?
We did. We met, we had one-on-one meetings with dozens of CBOs, including the ones that worked on this program. And some of them voiced exactly the same concerns you're voicing, which is we've got to figure out a better way to do these online applications, whether it's maybe we can do, you know, in-person sessions, or the CBOs can help do those types of sessions, but that really was a concern. It was the online application, but it was also having to upload documentation that was really, they were finding that difficult.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Joe, I'm sorry I cut you off, but please.
No, not at all. Thank you, commissioners. I want to walk through these slides rather quickly with you. I think you've seen some of this data before when we provided an update. But I also want to just mention overall in terms of the outreach and communications effort, as Sharon had mentioned, the lead time was extraordinarily short, and the actual application window was very brief. So I do think that the results are impacted by that. In addition, because we were right in the November, December timeframe with the pandemic, and we were starting to see cases increase, you know, we would normally have our customer service centers be open and available for people to either go in and, you know, do it, you know, in person or whatever. And I realize in person has its own set of challenges, but because this happened during the pandemic, and the customer service centers effectively being closed, to being able to tell people go there if you have internet access issues, or like you mentioned, partnering with CBOs to do in person. Unfortunately, that tool wasn't one in our overall outreach that was as available to us as we would have wanted. And I think it definitely would have impacted the numbers to be able to do applications in person without the concerns around virus transmission, obviously. So we used every tool really available to us under the circumstances, both earned media, flyers, emails, paid emails, you know, emails to all of our customers, postcards sent to every person that was eligible for a low-income program, as well as paid ads on media. And go ahead and move to the next slide, Reggie. An example here, just in terms of some of the earned media results that we saw, we did get a very nice response from media to helping get the word out, both through their digital channels as well as through earned media. And if we didn't have access to the earned part, we paid for it. Next slide. In terms of multilingual coverage, again, good partnership with our media partners. In this case, they were airing stories on our behalf about the program because it was obviously of news value, but also we had done some advertising partnerships with many of them that obviously in some ways does help in encouraging their coverage on the media side, on the news side. And you'll see we did have some multiple languages that helped us get the word out to various communities. Next slide. Digital was a big part of this. We did, for the first time really, with LA Sentinel, some of their customized email blasts to their entire subscriber base. It's a very effective tool, and it was really nice to really pilot that for the first time with them and to see the results. They have about 36,000 digital subscribers, La Opinion 50,000, and Downtown News 15,000. That's something I'd like to see us do more with other ethnic newspapers as well. And with just a little bit more lead time, I think we could have pulled that off as well with them. Let's go ahead to the next slide. These were other outlets that we used: East Sider, LA Sentinel, as I mentioned, LA Watch Times, Native America Today, La Opinion, and City Watch were some of the digital media outlets that we used. In these instances, if you got an email or you saw this ad, you could click on it, it would take us to the website. And we really saw the impact on our web traffic from these ads. Next slide. Here's some of the data around the email blasts that we sent out. We really did over communicate on this to as many of the customers that we had direct contacts for, including through all of our various channels. Our channels aren't efficient, but they can be effective, as we saw with this program. I think, you know, in the data that Sharon had shared, that 56% heard from LADWP. and then 23 were from a friend or social media. Many of those social media posts would have been either posted by us or by our partners. So I would like to claim a little credit for some of those, some of that part of the numbers. And certainly, when people see something of value and want to share it on social media, that's called organic reach. And we really had a significant increase in help from customers in getting the word out about it. Next slide. This would be the data on the web pages. We saw a 20% increase in site traffic to LADWP.com overall. That's really the top line message on that slide, which I think was very impressive considering we have a lot of people that pay their bill normally online. Next slide. And again, just in terms of some of the level of detail, we were sharing the application, the flyer. We partnered, as Sharon mentioned, the CBOs were a really good partner in this. I think using that model moving forward makes a lot of sense because they have the community connections. They know best how to get it and can let us know what they need for getting the word out. So we did provide all of our collateral to those organizations. There's 60 of them. And then also to all city PIOs and ask them to echo our messaging around the program to help get people enrolled. Next slide. As I mentioned, the postcard we mailed out to over 250,000 customers as succinct as we could, information about potential eligibility. Next slide. And then, as I mentioned, the social media piece was critical. Through overall messaging, we don't see our customers as engaged with us on social media as when we do send direct emails. Direct email is by far the most effective way to reach them. When a utility like DWP sends an email, our click rate is by far something Marty mentioned at the beginning. When they get a message from LADWP in an email, they do open it. Which is something that's the trust we've built and the importance, obviously, of your water and power utility to our customers. So that's really priority number one, but the social piece has to back it up. And we did a lot of paid promotion and saw a lot of shares. Next slide. And go ahead and go to the next because I wanted to highlight this. I'm sorry, the employees piece was also important. And then one more slide. I'm sorry, it's just a little out of order. Neighborhood councils help get the word out around them as well, and sharing through our online portals there with them and through all the neighborhood council network that we are able to communicate with, both directly via email as well as through the Nextdoor app. And next slide. And this is what I wanted to show you is the organizations themselves posting our content, linking to the page. These are the folks with the relationships in the community that people trust. They're our partners, and they were very, very helpful and supportive in getting the word out about the program. And I believe that's the last slide. Yes. I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Questions? Then I'll simply say that from a communications perspective, I think the department did just a superb job. It was really, really first rate. And I look forward to some really creative and expansive thinking about additional ways of getting important messages out to a much broad to the broad community. Certainly would not expect this to be replicated every time we've got something to say, but I do believe that the community-based model, the partnerships involved, the level of both paid and earned media was just really, really well done. And to just reinforce that we don't want to learn. Oh, and to take note, Joe, of your comments regarding the point in time that this took place. In addition to COVID and all of the other challenges, it was also like a week after an election that I think exhausted everybody. So we were up against a lot of things that were grabbing attention. I think an election that took a week to determine. So, this was really a job well done. So thank you for that. And if there are no further comments, we have remarkably, I believe, we have item number 17, almost there. Item number 17.
Excuse me, President McCLAIN-HILL, filed items number 9.
Yes, filed items. Are there any comments regarding filed items? Or any questions with respect to anything that's been filed?
Yes, I have a question. Hi there. I was curious about 3 of the monthly reports on EVs, just to understand a little about the EV charging rebate program, which had been suspended or it was not released in January. And I was just curious if there was an update on that.
Good morning, Commissioner. This is Louis Ting, Director of Power Plant Development Engineering. As far as the level 2 rebate for only for the level 2 rebate, so level 3 is still open. The EV used car rebate is still open. We have essentially opened back in August of last year, and there was a lottery process that went through. And right now it is currently, it's up to our limit for the first tranche of 20 million. So we're going to look at our rebate program again, the overall program, and look at the budget for this year and also for next fiscal year. And we're going to revisit and completely look at what our funding of availability plus, and also our current program has a $4,000 rebate, and with the additional $1,000 for disadvantaged communities, we're going to relook at that and see what kind of interest we're going to be getting for the next tranche. So we do plan to open up the level 2 rebate again.
And to be clear, the level 2 is what?
The level 2 is the one that is available for individual residential homes, but mainly for workplace and also for multifamily and also for commercial charging.
Okay, great. Can you, the next board meeting, just give a status update on those plans? Because what you said was helpful, but it was still a little ambiguous about timing.
That's correct. So we have essentially oversubscribed on our first tranche of 20 million. And so we're going to be looking at a second tranche opening up because of some of the oversubscription. We want to make sure that we don't have that issue again. But we're looking overall that program.
Okay, so next time you'll have a timeline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'll come back and report back. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we've had a lot of there seems to be a lot of moving parts associated with our EV rebates, and we will be putting, I think we are probably due a comprehensive update to make sure that we understand what's occurring, that what is occurring is aligned with our overall goals and objectives, that the programs are being administered in a way that is smooth and effective. So I think Lewis and company, we're going to need to be, you're going to need to be prepared to do that, in at the next board meeting or the one following that. So I'm not certain about what scheduling looks like for April, but this is something that we're going to want to see laid out pretty comprehensively in April. So just heads up, Marty.
And just to connect it as well to our infrastructure expansion of the charging stations, what does that look like? Specifically because if we're talking about rebates, we're also talking about the future of infrastructure and how those rebates are going to play out. So I'd like to see something about that as well so we can connect the dots. Thank you.
We'll definitely include that also. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or anything that staff would like to highlight with respect to filed item to our filed items? Okay. Hearing none, if we could, Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, you asked for you had some comments on number 17. Would you like a presentation or would you like to begin with your questions?
Let's start with the presentation, please.
Okay, perfect. If we could have that presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Dave Christensen. I'm the manager of the Project and Construction Management section in the wet section of the water system. We're here to ask for an extension of time, 4 years, an additional $35 million to complete phase 3 of the Headworks projects. So far, we have completed the first 2 phases, the East Reservoir and the West Reservoir, and we're currently getting ready to start on phase 3, which is the flow control station. We're asking for this increase because the initial estimate of $40 million was basically done at a conceptual stage. And so there's a vast variation in the final cost of this project, which is determined as you progress the designs. We completed designs last year, and as such, we were able to re-estimate and come up with the price of $65 million for the cost of the flow control station, and we're asking for an additional $10 million in contingency due to pretty significant price fluctuations in commodities that we're seeing for the last several months. So that's what we're asking for. The extension of time, this project started back in 2011, and we've already asked for an extension of time from 2018 to 2021, and now we're asking for an additional extension until 2025, December 31st of 2025, in order to complete the work out at the project. The flow control station itself should be done in 2023, and then we'll need some more time at the site to complete that work there. So essentially what we're doing, if we could see the next slide, please. The flow control station is basically a giant vault, an underground vault, which goes into the ground, and it will have pipes coming in and flow control valves inside. This facility is necessary in order to make sure that we maintain elevation in both the Headworks reservoirs and in the source of the water for this, which is the North Hollywood sump. We need to maintain an elevation in the sump in order to keep water in the pipeline of the RSC River Supply Conduit Pipeline, which is a 78-inch welded steel pipeline running from the North Hollywood site all the way down to Headworks. It's a law that requires us to have positive pressure, 5 psi, in the pipe at all times, and this flow control station allows us to do that. Also part of this project is 2,000 feet of 78-inch pipe, which will help us complete the RSC. And so that's why we're asking for this money at this time. The initial estimate of $40 million, like I said, was done at the concept. And as we progressed design, we kept on refining our estimate until we have arrived at this point. Next slide, please.
So I guess my question is, phase 4 is also just an estimate, right?
Yes, the phase 4, Commissioner, the way this project was essentially set up initially back in 2011, I'm sorry to have to go back, there was an amount of money allocated for each phase. And so the $40 million that's allocated for phase 3 was originally there. And so the additional money, the $30 million that we have for phase 4, has always been there. We've asked for increases as we go through each phase to pay for each phase.
And so the phase 4 for the that final portion is a budgeted number, and the work that will be done there for the site restoration will be held at that number. So it'll be designed around the number.
Please continue.
Essentially, that's it for this presentation and for what we're asking for here. So essentially, this is the money for phase 3 to complete the construction of phase 3, and also for the time to complete phase 3 and phase 4 of the project.
Okay, but phase 4 in the estimate says 2025, right? Yeah.
For completion, yes, ma'am.
So the contract, the extension of time, sorry, it's a little bit of forensics here to get this straight. The 4
The 4 years will take the current contract completion date of December 31st, 2021, and extend that to December 31st of 2025.
Okay, and so then do you anticipate phase 4 needing to be revised, the cost then?
No, ma'am, we're holding firm with the amount of money that we have for that phase.
Okay. Okay, so, and this will be what number? A 4th amendment. Okay.
This
So
will be the 4th amendment, but this is for phase 3.
Right, right. Okay, so the total project has gone up about 100, almost 50% so far.
That's correct. The initial estimate was 230 million. When we discovered that the first 2 phases were more expensive than we thought, we asked for 123 million from the original amount. And that took it from 230 million to 353 million. And now we're asking for an additional 35 million. That will take the total price up to 388 million.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate you helping me put pieces together.
No problem. It took us a while to understand as well.
So, and in the project, the building that you're going to do for the water
Flow control station.
The flow control station?
Yes. The tasting station, is that in this budget?
No, ma'am. I believe you might be referring to the direct potable reuse facility.
Yes.
And that's a separate project. What we're talking about today is strictly for phase 3, and that is the flow control station.
I just think when you know, first of all, it's in the building is in the drawing you show, and it's, you know, for Commissioner Brady, if she, you know, being that she's in this world, it would be good to say this does not include that building or that facility.
Okay, that's a future project. So yes, but no, none of this money is for the direct potable reuse or the water quality lab, which both facilities we plan on putting at the Headworks site.
Okay, thank you.
Can you also mention the fact that there is an increased cost in the materials, or you're changing to like a better type of materials for, you know, resiliency purposes as well?
Well, the welded steel pipe that we're installing is an earthquake resistant pipe. And so that's what we use in earthquake susceptible zones, is either welded steel or the newly developed earthquake resistant ductile iron pipe. In this case, we're using welded steel because it's going underground and we don't want it to fail. So welded steel is our preferred method for that. The cost of materials has risen dramatically. From 2011, the cost of steel was about $700 a ton. Today, in 2021, that same steel is going for about $1,500 per ton. So we've seen an over 200% increase over that time. But even more recently, from 2018, we're seeing a very significant increase in those material costs, whether it be steel or concrete, and also labor. There's quite a bit of labor involved in building one of these facilities. So we're also reflecting the increase in labor costs as well.
Thank you.
I just have just a few questions or perhaps observations, just kind of looking through the subcontracting history. I noted that this is as I would imagine most of our contracts are best efforts contract. And am I correct in, am I correct in reading the attachment that in the city of Los Angeles, that the commitment amount, or is the commitment amount, is that a reference? Let me ask it differently. What does commitment amount refer to?
When we are awarding contracts, we try to set not requirements, but goals for the contractors to meet for subcontracting. This contract is fairly older, so those standards have changed in that time. But we, working with supply chain services, we develop goals for participation, and we encourage our contractor to meet those goals when we're talking with them and we're discussing who they're subcontracting with. Those are part of our discussion that we have with them in order to make sure that they understand that while the word may say goals or commitments, we consider this very important, and we would like our contractors to meet those if at all possible. And if they cannot, we would like them to explain why they have not been able to meet those goals or commitments.
And so you say that it's an old contract, which is great, but this is this would be Amendment 4, right?
That is correct, but it's still based off the original contract that was awarded back in 2011. Those terms still are relevant to this contract. Those have not been changed since it was awarded.
Can they be?
I am a little, I would assume so. Yes, ma'am, but please don't hold me to that.
Well, let me just say this. I'm looking at goals for MBE of 7.8%. That was for 1 through 3. And it appears as if they hit 8.5%. I mean, still in the city of Los Angeles, pretty paltry, but that's what they hit. And our current commitment, our current goal for amendment number 4 is the same, 7%. When I look at WBE, the goal was 2.8%. They achieved 3.5%. And again, I'm going to refrain from saying anything about what that represents. But we're asking, we're setting our current goal at the same 2.8%. For other business enterprises, and I'm not clear what that covers, but in any event, we're at 1.4%, or I'm sorry, at 0.142% is what we had as a goal. And for for small business, it appears, I mean, again, our goals seem pretty paltry and remain paltry. And in my view, when we talk about opportunity and we talk about equity and we talk about the ability of this department to significantly impact the quality of life of folks who live in this town, it's hard to do that while achieving or while working with our contractors not encouraging somewhat better performance on some of these issues. So I am a little loath to approve a contract extension of this magnitude with goals that are that paltry.
Okay, we can take it up. We can discuss it. These are terms that we've agreed to with our contractor already. This is something that we can sit down and discuss with them. I believe first internally we need to have the discussions with our SCS and our city attorney in order to determine the best path forward, if that's the desired outcome that you would like to see.
But as I indicated, I would be hard pressed to move the contract forward without some better explanation, examination, or some assurance that we will be more aggressive in developing goals with our contractors that better reflect the diversity of the city in which we live.
With our new contract, those have been increased. We've also added a project labor agreement to many of our large contracts in order to improve local hiring and training of local people in the crafts. So those are steps we are taking in our newer contracts. But this contract, as I said, is 10 years old. And so the terms that we were using 10 years ago are what is still relevant in this contract.
I'm just curious, I mean, a contract extension, there is new consideration, which means it supports new terms to an agreement. Is there something about this that's different from every other contract? From not every other contract, but from the kinds of contracts that I'm accustomed to dealing with?
No, ma'am, we can negotiate changes.
Dave, you want to talk about, though, on this particular amendment, the sensitivity of time?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand it's very time sensitive, and I just want to make sure that the people on this call and our contracting community understand that there are lots of things that are urgent and sensitive. And so I'm just a little frustrated that, notwithstanding how time sensitive it is, that these issues weren't reviewed in the context of all of the priorities that as a department we've indicated are important to us. Because really, it's where the rubber meets the road on stuff like this. And where things get lost is in the urgency of achieving what we assert are more important or more vital goals.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would, the only thing I would say is, obviously, this is an unusual contract to be a 10-year-old contract. That would be the.
We are always extending contracts. I mean, that's
Right.
one of the things that we do here every 2 weeks. We're amending and extending. So, you know, to have this be a contract that's been around for a long time is really, frankly, in my experience, not that unusual.
I also have a technical question which just dawned on me. Is this subject to city council approval because
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
term?
Yes, ma'am.
And has it been scheduled? No, because we're talking about sensitivity, timing, and all that. Has the CAO report been generated yet for this item?
The CAO report was waived on this one, and it doesn't get scheduled to council until after your board takes an action.
Well, why was it waived?
To allow for the site restoration to go on as planned in the time frame that we've been wanting to get it done, especially the park amenity. If not this and the work being done here for this part of the project might drag on until be able to have funds and time until the end of the year.
Because this is such a huge project, I would prefer that we follow the normal course for approval of such huge contracts, especially if it's an amendment again. I just noticed it.
We vetted that decision through the mayor's office and got their support on this one to be able to get the ED4 process waived.
Yeah, and as I recall, we've
Yeah,
had
curious.
conversations in the past about board items and contracts coming before the board with these, you know, if we don't approve it today, something bad is going to happen. What bad thing is going to happen if this isn't approved today?
Dave?
Yeah, essentially the construction work will be delayed, and so we will incur additional costs associated with that. The contractor will file delays because we don't have the money for them to move forward. So we will incur increased costs. We will also delay the ability to put some of these facilities into service when they're.
When did all of this become apparent? Is there some reason that it's on this board agenda as opposed to a board agenda a month ago or 2 months ago?
We have been working on this for several months now, and the process which we were following has recently changed. We were initially only going to ask for the board to approve the movement of money from phase 4 to phase 3 in order to complete this. And then we were going to come back to the board in the future and ask for additional time and money to complete the rest of the project. But we had the opportunity to present this amendment to the board at this time, and we took advantage of that.
And just for my clarification, who waived the ED4?
I believe the mayor is the only one who has the authority to do that, so that came from his office.
Okay, thank you.
I am curious about, Richard, what we might be able to do to provide some continuity for this contract while maintaining the flexibility to work with the contractor on his goals under the contract for the various areas that I cited.
I suppose you could do a partial approval, not the whole amount, but enough to keep us going. And then we would just go back and negotiate on the remaining amount.
Can I offer a suggestion to that, Rich? If the board approved the additional money for phase 3, that keeps the contract going. What it doesn't do then is does not guarantee the contractor that he'll be working into phase 4. And so, and that's the extension part. There's enough time still continue work. Is that correct? That the financial issue is more pressing immediately than the time issue, or do I have that wrong?
No, that's correct, Marty. We need the money in order to complete the award of the work packages for this, so they can start construction. They're planning right now to start construction in May. But then we would need to extend the contract by the end of the year because that's when the current contract expires. So that gives us essentially 9 months, 8 months to do so. And that's about the time frame that we were looking to go through the ED4 process if that was necessary in order to amend the contract.
And so for the commission standpoint, since phase 4 is really focused on site restoration, that there's time to deal with that. This has more to do with the hard infrastructure installation and then continuing that. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So can we do this? We're going to go into a rather lengthy executive session. Can we just hold this item over to give Richard Tom or his team, perhaps the procurement team and Dave and Rich, an opportunity to put together an alternative that might allow things to move forward or that will not result in an interruption of the work that is currently taking place, while at the same time allowing for this contract to come back to the board just as an option that we can vote on after closed session?
Sure.
Commissioner, this is Richard Tom. I just wanted to make sure I understood what Marty was saying. It sounded like, Marty, the separation you're speaking of is to perhaps in line with what the commissioners have spoken of, identify the phase 3 work as what would be approved today, and then only the phase 3 work, which would be an amendment of the amount of money, and then we would leave for a later date the phase 4 work. Is that what I understood you to be proposing?
That's what I was suggesting, because I think that that allows the existing work to continue uninterrupted, but then what it doesn't do, it doesn't promise the contractor that he's going to be there to finish phase 4 unless he sits down and renegotiates certain terms.
Right, and phase 4 could be the subject of something that gets brought back to the board. Again, this contract overall doesn't expire, as I understand, until the end of this year, so that would give some window of opportunity to negotiate the phase 4 work. With that understanding, I will look to the deputy who's working on this, I believe it's Dirk, to work with the procurement folks and with the water folks to come up with an alternative in line with what the board president's proposing and have that available after the closed session. If that's acceptable.
That would work for me. I'd just like the board to have the opportunity to consider that alternative, and don't want to do it on the fly in the context of this discussion. So it would be useful to have the subject matter experts and you, Richard, Tom, to make sure that it is being done in a manner that is consistent with, action that we could appropriately take under this agendized item.
Right.
So with that, are there any additional questions or comments?
Yes, just to President McCLAIN-HILL, can you just clarify for the team, because I think I may be the only one confused, but just a little more direction around the subcontracting. What are you looking for? I think that would be helpful for the team.
What I'm looking for is, frankly, that the opportunity for this department to sit down with its contractor to review the current goals and to revise those goals where appropriate to reflect more substantive targets than the targets in the current contract, to have that then incorporated in any potential amendment of the contract.
Okay, I think that's helpful. Yeah, they did quite a bit of subcontracting, so it's interesting to see that volume. And for me, as this evolves, since you mentioned that it's separate, David, I would like to better understand the rest of the project pieces around the park and what that will entail. As it didn't quite dawn on me that would be separate from all the contractual approvals we've done. So the park and then the other two facilities I think you mentioned. It'd be great to get those in front of the board again for context.
Yes, ma'am. We can certainly discuss those.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
That'll be coming up in an upcoming presentation.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So we will leave this item open and take it up again when we come out of closed session. I would, at this point, like us to, I've been advised by our staff that getting us into closed session requires a sprint from one place in the department to another. And so at this time, they would appreciate if we would take, as I assume many of you would, a 15-minute break to allow them to set up for closed session. So we will resume our meeting at 12:05. That's about 15 minutes from now on the closed session line.
Yeah, Madam President, may I, if I may, just to announce, at this time, the board will recess to closed session, as you said, at 12:05 for a conference with legal counsel on closed agenda items. The board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Government Code Section 54957.1. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
15 minutes? Okay.
Please remain silent.
Just quickly, I don't see Jill pictured. I want to make sure that she can that we've established voice contact with her, because we have only 3 people and we'll need to be able to record her.
Commissioner Barad, can you hear us?
Real quick.
We're calling her. She was in.
So let's hold for a second.
Okay.
We're reaching out to Commissioner Barad right now.
I thought she was on earlier.
She is. I know that Commissioner LEHRER cannot rejoin. Is Commissioner NEEMAN-Brady also not rejoining?
She's coming back in, President McCLAIN-HILL.
Okay, great. Thank you.
He's back reconnecting. Thank you.
We are recording. Would you like me to take roll? She's on mute. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Vice President Reyes. She's giving me the thumbs up. Commissioner Barad.
Rose.
And Commissioner NEEMAN-Brady. Commissioner NEEMAN-Brady.
I don't see her on the screen, but we do have a quorum. So if we can resume the meeting at this point, where we left off with a discussion of of item number 17. And I'm interested in the degree to which staff and council have been able to come back with an alternative to approving the item as presented.
Okay, so while we're in closed session, the project staff did meet with supply chain services and legal counsel for the department. So a little bit of background of why we're using the method that we are for setting the quote unquote goals for the women and minority and other business owned entities for subcontracting opportunities. So this project is receiving federal funding through the state revolving fund. When you do so, the federal requirements of the good faith effort program that they have takes precedent over who's ever receiving the money. So in this case, obviously us and our own local supplier diversity program, if it differs. So in this case, it does, because under those rules with the federal government that's in this contract, it's just a good faith effort. And it doesn't have the same requirements, more stricter requirements that would maybe get the outcomes that we would want under our own supplier diversity program. So that's the reason why there isn't a straight ability for us to command anything more than that, because if we want to accept those federal funds or state funds, then we have to play by their rules. Now, what we could do, there's still one more phase 4, and what we could do is prior to coming back for that, because I think we authorized from the board each phase, is that we could come back to you under a case where we would not accept the federal funds for that. Now, these are low interest loans. It's not grant money, and we would come back at that point for the final phase with an option to obviously we would go back to the contractor and see if we could get higher percentages for those subcontractor opportunities, and then come back and authorize that, or ask for authorization.
And I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You said that the federal government sets it's good faith, and they have, I assume, certain targets or parameters. The parties can't agree to do better. They have to accept those particular targets and parameters.
I'll bring in maybe Aaron Lawrence on that one. So this is at the time of the original award, Aaron?
Well, at the time of the original award, because it was an outreach.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm hearing a bit of an echo. So the good faith effort outreach is really a mandated outreach effort, and the goals that came out of that were what they had agreed to. But we can always go back and request that they try to give us more and work with them on their outreach effort. But it is definitely a different program from our standard SBE, DVBE program.
No, I understand that. So I think that, because I mean, what Rich just said was that in coming back with a contract amendment for 4, that we may need to forego federal, the portion of this contract that's funded through this federal low interest loan, because under that contract, we would be required to accept certain conditions that are different from what we might otherwise seek to achieve in the absence of those dollars. And I was simply asking a question about whether or not that we were mandated to accept a particular target under the contract, or if the parties could negotiate something that might be more robust than what the federal government required.
So Aaron, correct me, but I guess the essence of the difference is the feds just require good faith effort, and we would require more of that target effort. So there would be possibly an opportunity we could go back to them and say, everything else aside, how could we negotiate just you including more minority women-owned businesses in this phase, and negotiate over a cost for that, kind of outside the parameters? They'd have to be willing to do that, and we'd have to be willing to negotiate possibly higher costs. I would imagine that will result in delays as well, so that'll have to get cranked in, the additional costs for time delays. But that would be the other alternative, is just to go and try to negotiate outside the contract.
Yes, we could do that, Rich.
So I guess today, because the goal was to determine what was required today, at least my goal was to determine what was required today to ensure that there is no disruption of the project, while we determined what we did with respect to the 4th Amendment, looking at options and alternatives to simply amending the contract with all of the provisions remaining intact. So that was my goal. Is that something that do we have a path forward with respect to achieving that goal today?
Well, I would offer that we ask for your approval of what we've presented already as is, with the proviso that before that we would begin an award the phase 4, that we would come back to the board with an option that would allow us to apply our own supplier diversity program and the impacts it would be financially by not accepting the low interest loans on that remaining $35 million or so part of the project. And we'd have time to be able to do that.
As opposed to simply moving additional funds into phase 3 and taking a position on phase 4 once it's all worked out?
I think I'm saying the same thing because there's no guarantee of phase 4. We still have to, award that point. So you're still dealing with and negotiating with the contractor over phase 4.
Okay. And is there some language that achieves that outcome? Because simply approving the contract in front of us doesn't do that.
Yeah, I think just calling him Richard Tom, he could give you some wording just to add on the resolution or the approving language today that staff is directed to come back to the commission prior to any award for the phase 4 work with the use of the department's own supplier diversity program applied to that project.
I have been trading messages with my folks, and I don't have that language right in front of me yet. If we could, I think if you're wanting the language, I will need about 5 minutes to just get the language that you're talking about, Rich. I just haven't seen the language yet.
I thought what I said was pretty good, and
Well, I mean, if you want to restate it, I mean, I just my challenge has been that I was obviously enclosed, and I haven't had a chance to see specific language in writing. But let me speak with the deputy who's working on this, and if we could take, I hate to do this to you, Commission President, but I think in the interest of making sure it achieves what the board wishes to do, I think it's probably best if we take a 5-minute recess so that I can get you the language that matches up with what Rich is talking about.
Well, let me ask this, because Marty seemed to pretty clearly state what we were seeking to achieve today. Rich, you've indicated that in doing that, you need the resolution before us approved and amended with direction. I'm trying to understand the difference between allocating additional dollars to the current contract and approving amendment number 4.
So amendment number 4 puts money into phase 3. Phase 3 doesn't have enough money to do what's required to do under phase 3. So that's the action today, is to put money into phase 3 that's not there.
Got it. And I have a question. How long? But putting money into phase 3 extends this contract for how long? I mean, the dollars that are going into phase 3 essentially.
Well, we're also asking for more time. So the contract, no matter what, expires towards the end of this year. So we're also asking for more time to not only complete the work in phase 3, which will take more than the allotted time currently, and then also provide enough time for when it's time to start and finish phase 4, that time is included as well.
So I guess that's so they could go with just money now, but money alone won't get phase 3 done. But the money deadline's coming before the current phase runs out of time-wise. So in that sense, if you approve the money but not the time, we'll have to come back sooner with time just for phase 3, no matter what happens on phase 4. Or if you approve the whole extension, then we have a caveat that the board does not authorize us to proceed with phase 4 until that comes back to board with new terms.
And phase 4, that would be coming back to board in 2025?
Before that, because that's when construction will be complete. So I think that will probably be no sooner than next year.
Yeah, Rich, that would probably be next year, maybe late next year, that we'd be coming back to the board for phase 4 for approval for phase 4. So in 2022, probably spring of 2022, spring or fall, or summer of 2022.
That gives us time then to work out new terms with the contractor.
Yes, sir, it does.
With the understanding that we would be under our own program and absent the federal low interest loan money.
Yeah, and I guess that what I'm not convinced of is that the federal low interest money sets a cap as opposed to a floor. So that's the part that I'm just not convinced of today, and no one's telling me that that's the case today. So what
I think the difference is that it doesn't set percentages. It sets it's a different type of program. It's just it's just a good faith program, and it kind of is.
Well, except that we have commitments under the good faith program based on the paperwork that you put in front of us. It says commitments and it says actuals. So is that not what's going on here? I mean, good faith just means that, they're not contractually obligated to deliver it. They're contractually obligated to try. I get that part. I'm clear about the difference, but that doesn't mean that there hasn't been a robust and substantive discussion about what try might look like and what might be achieved were they trying, and clearly we're tracking it. So I'm just confused.
Yeah, Aaron, I don't know if you can add to that. I would add on the phase 3 work that at least $30 million of it is just buying steel, and there's only 2 places that we can get steel from, and either one of them, unfortunately, is a minority of women-owned business. So there are limited opportunities just for this phase based on that fact.
Mm. And I would just add that we absolutely can have a substantive conversation with them and call them in and look at those terms and look at those things for the packages moving forward. And that's absolutely something we can do. And just to vet it with legal to make sure that we are within the parameters of the program or the program and the contractual provisions we have today.
Okay. Is there any comment or discussion from any other board member on this?
I just think good faith effort is not cutting it this time. It's just good faith, and really there's no substance to it based on what you just explained.
May I ask a question? Dave Christensen, if the board was to approve the money to continue construction, I know there's materials to buy and that sort of thing for the phase 3, that the current contract gets you through the end of this calendar year, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So that should be ample time to bring back prior to the calendar year what you need for time extension and discuss these terms, either as Aaron suggests, either we come to some agreement within the current contract or we decide that maybe we do our own thing without some of the SRF funding. But that certainly brings the time frame up in terms of having this resolved, doesn't it?
That is correct. Yes, we would need to amend the contract by the end of the year in order to continue work.
But in other words, we could approve the money, but you could only spend so much until that time, and then we'd have to come back with more time, and at that point we'd come back with different terms.
But allows the contractor to purchase the pipe, purchase the valves, do the things that are material, which also have very little to do, unfortunately, with subcontracting opportunities, because it's more material purchases and the things that they need for this phase. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, sir. Yeah, we could award if we approve the money, that would allow us to award all of the work packages to complete the work. we would not have enough time to complete the work. So we would need to come back and amend the contract in order to give us more time and also address these terms that we're talking about.
Right. So then we have plenty of time and a driver with the end date by which to come back with some resolution for the board.
Yes, sir.
And that will be, and that will be within the year, just for clarification.
It would have to be by the end of this year because the contract expires on 12/31 of this year.
Okay, before that.
Thank you, Marty. That's I thought that there was some solution that would achieve everyone's objectives without disruption. And so with that observation, I would like to move that we amend this item to remove the extension of time of the contract, leaving only the approval of the additional funds under the contract. Is there a second?
I second.
Would you please call the roll on that, Susie?
President
I'm sorry,
McCLAIN-HILL?
you that? Aye.
Vice President Reyes?
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD?
Aye. So the amendment passes. Now we will need to take a vote on the amended motion. I move approval of the motion as amended.
So move.
Is there a second? Oh, you have a move. Okay, I will second. Would you call the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Vice President Reyes?
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD?
Aye.
3 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know that typically when we get to the close of our meeting, there's this like mad exodus to get off the call. But before we close, I just have one final and additional comment. Today is the last board meeting for our board secretary, Susie Rodriguez. She has threatened me within an inch of my life if I were to put her on the spot on this call. And it is therefore very good news that we are rounding the corner on COVID and that we are pushing out vaccines in a very robust manner so that I can be assured that we will have an opportunity to convene at some future date, not too far out, to properly vet and to salute her and her superb performance for this organization and for the board. And I can promise you it will be the first formal action, public action this commission takes when we are able to convene in person again. That said, I do want to just simply say that it is rare in any context that you meet someone who becomes not only a highly valued employee, but a true co-conspirator and a ride or die friend. And for me, that is an exceptionally rare occurrence. And in Susie, I found that. The thing that I want to close with, the thing that I want to say to her as she serves or supports her last board meeting is that, it's great to leave a job knowing that you have achieved historic first. It's really great to leave a job knowing that you've earned the respect and the affection of your colleagues across the board. But as a daughter, I know that today and her last day at this department will be marked for her by the knowledge that she has made Albert Rodriguez, her father and former DWP employee, incredibly proud. she says I would make her cry if I made her talk. Talking about her is incredibly emotional for me. So with that, I am going to end this meeting by saying congratulations, Susie. And I will give all of you the opportunity to speak at that grand event that we are planning for her, because Jill and Susana, she said she would kill me if I open the floor. So I am not going to do that, Marty and the rest of you, but please do reach out to her and say goodbye over these next few days. She's tried to keep it very much under wraps, but she is in fact going to walk out the door after 41 years. I have not been able to come up with a way to tie her down and keep her. Thank you all for this meeting, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Hi, thank you.